Okay, I'm here with Don Portman. I think it's working.
Amazing, with a little volume.
Isn't it? Yeah. So you can see when you go to Jen Tate land. See, we can't even get there. She won't care we said that. So maybe you could just tell the story of how we got this amazing ski trail system.
Sure. So what happened was, really, in the middle 70s, there was a boom in cross-country skiing throughout the country. There's never been one like it since. Most of the companies sold so many skis. Everybody was trying it. All the baby boomers were getting really excited about cross-country skiing, including us. And Dave Chandler, who you know, was a cross-country ski buyer for REI. At that time, he would take trips to Norway to select wooden skis, a lot of roots, and bring them to Seattle and sell them in packages. Well, I was a fully certified Nordic instructor and teaching in Seattle, both public schools and doing this on the side. But we bought property here in the Met Town in 1972 and built a cabin. And that was kind of an interesting thing because we bought a house for $40. It was a derelict house up in the hills, and I went to the farmer and I said, "Can I buy the house for the material?" He said, "Sure. What do you want for it?" $40. Okay. And so we tore it down, and then we built this cabin. So we started coming over to our little cabin, and we wanted, of course, right away. I said, "Well, let's live here." And so I contacted Sun Mountain and said, "You should hire me to do your cross-country program." At the same time, Dave Chandler had already started bringing busloads of people from REI to Sun Mountain. And Sun Mountain hired a different guy to start a cross-country program. He wasn't into it. He was here because he wanted to get in on the ground floor of the Aspen Corporation. He was a downhill skier. He saw an opportunity. He had about 3 or 4 pair of wooden skis, and he put some little cardboard signs out around the trails. Groomed them maybe once a month or something. It really wasn't good. So Chandler contacted Jack Barron, who we'd already been bringing bus trips, and said, "Hey, you got to hire a professional to do this." And it just so happened that he saw my name there saying that I was a professional ski instructor. He called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And I said, "Well, of course." So in 1976, I started with Sun Mountain, and they paid me $4 an hour to groom the trails. And
Same as I get today.
Yeah. And they had a Yamaha snowmobile and this old thing that almost groomed. It was a piece of junk. And then a percentage of the cross-country ski rentals and lessons and stuff like that. And so that's how it started. And then Chandler helped a lot. He helped lay out some of the trails. He helped brush them out in the fall. I mean, he was really into it, which was great. And he put on what was then called the Sun Mountain Chase, which was the first Nordic races here at Sun Mountain. Shortly after Doug Devon put on a race in Emma. So anyway, at that time, since cross-country skiing was booming, Dick Roberts and Sue Roberts started North Cascade Base Camp, and they started grooming trails at Early Winters with the help of Jack Wilson and Doug Devon, and then a guy named Enoch Kraft had a place called the Diamond T Ranch in Toronto, and he started grooming trails up there. And in the meantime, we had formed the Methow Valley Family Sports Club, and its purpose was to play soccer and put on some races. But they didn't do any grooming, they didn't do any maintenance. It was just kind of a social sports club, just what it said. And Larry Tibisca, who was a retired attorney in Wenatchee, was part of that group. And he was the one that kind of pushed to make things sort of official, like to write bylaws and do stuff like that. And then about a year or two later, it just seemed obvious that we couldn't do anything unless we started to get some more money to pay for grooming, because we couldn't do it with what we had. We had a bunch of junk equipment. We couldn't keep up with big snow. So we all got together and said, well, let's form a ski organization to groom and charge for it. And that's what we did, and that's how our VSTA started. And it started as a family sports club, and then it went to Methow Valley Ski Touring Association, and then I don't remember how many years later, since we started doing summer trails, it became a VSTA. So that's kind of how it got its start, and with the help of people like Dick Roberts and Enoch, and Dale Caulfield got involved about that time. We could put together this group, and Jay was involved right from the beginning as well. And nobody knows this, but I was actually the first executive director. And I looked at that job and I was totally overwhelmed. And I said, I can't do this. But Jay was good. And so after 1 year or even less, we kind of switched that around. And he took off with it. And so, well, you know the story about Jay and how I think what was important about Jay is that he had a little bit bigger vision than a lot of people. And he was really good at figuring out how to make things work. How can we get an extra piston bully? How can we do this? How can we make this happen? He was really good at that. And he would sort of look ahead, whereas I was always, let's connect all these trails, let's do all this stuff. But I really didn't push it like he did. And then, of course, once we had that organization, we were missing the major link. John Hayes just happened to come on the scene at about that time. And he and John Sunderland did all that incredible work to make that happen.
Yeah.
And so to make that happen, I mean, there's so many little tangents to this story. Okanagan County needed to be the organization that could hold the right-of-way deeds. To do that, they had to have a bunch of things they didn't have, like they didn't have a rec plan. So we wrote one for them. It was Jim Gregg, John Sunderland, John Hayes, and I wrote the first Okanagan County recreation plan based on the plan that Jim Gregg had worked on back in Colorado. Now, Kristen, this is early days of computers.
Yeah.
And John Hayes had one, so we'd all go to his office to work on it.
Really?
Yeah. Try and figure out how to do word processing on this little computer with a little green screen. And so then with all the work that Sunderland and Hayes did, which was really, really amazing. I mean, that's such a key thing for what happened. Then we could put together the system. And until that time, it was 3 separate places that were really separate, even though we were sharing a trail pass. And once in a while, we would share equipment or room. They really were separate until the connector happened. And that was John and John. And they just kept at it. And, well, you know Hayes. You can talk anybody into anything because you want to shut him up at some point. Say, okay, John, whatever, we'll do it. So that's kind of roughly how it went. Sun Mountain and the Howes were very supportive when Jack Barron died and they bought Sun Mountain. One of the first things that Helga Hobbs said was, why don't you guys have trails connecting all these places? And of course, she's from Europe where they did. And so they, of course, guaranteed the first loan so we could buy the first piston bully, which was a huge step. I can't tell you the amount of problems we had when we just had snowmobiles. Getting them stuck, crashing them, having them fall off trucks, sinking them in a beaver pond. I mean, everything you can imagine happened to them. And it was insane. So once we got a piston bully, then we could really take off on the grooming end.
Yeah.
And once John Hayes and John Sunderland put together the community trail, then we could really take off on the whole system. So those were really two really key things to it all. And of course, Larry Tibis was writing up the original bylaws of MBSTA and the whole concept of let's do this.
This is fantastic.
Also, things were totally different in those days. The easiest landowner to deal with was the Forest Service. And it was just incredible. You realize that some of those trails up there, I laid out, I called the bulldozer, and we did it. We never contacted the Forest Service. We never talked to them, and they didn't care.
Yeah.
I remember Mel Northcutt, I don't know if you ever knew him. He and I, when we did Crisscross and Overland, they were sort of cow trails and stuff, so we had to make them. You know, there was a couple of skid roads, and that's the bad parts of those were the skid roads that were already there. And we sort of knew where we wanted it, and I just said to Mel, follow me. And I just walked, and he just walked behind me with the cat, and we made the trail.
Wow.
And nobody cared. And we did it always in the fall, though, because we did want to make sure that it would grow back and look natural. So we did it in the fall. All the flowers would come back. Most of the grass would come back. And we reseeded it so it looked good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you
And
do it
then
in the
you
spring, then it
Yeah.
stays a scar all the time because you kill all those flowers
Yeah.
and stuff. So that was always important because we knew that those trails would be important this summer
Yeah.
as well.
Huh.
Yeah. and
Did
that's-
you create all the Sun Mountain trails then?
No, I didn't. Little Wolf was there.
That doesn't count.
Yeah, I know. And of course, Thompson was there.
All
And
the trails.
Beaver Pond Trail was there.
Okay.
All right, and then trying to remember when Chandler did those first races. They started Sun Mountain and they went down the hill, kind of the way Sunnyside is now, but it wasn't there. They just went.
Sure.
No, I take it back. They started on Little Wolf, went out to the Huff Place, and then came up what is now Blue Ridge, and they actually groomed that. Skied that to the finish at the lodge. Yeah, we used to groom it one time ago. So, Sunnyside, the way it is now, we put in. Aqualoop we put in, but there was already that big road out there for that half of it. And then Crisscross Overland, of course, Rodeo, Yellow Jacket, Raider Creek, Patterson Lake. Bert Van Gorder and I actually hand dug that trail
Did you?
in 1976. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we thought, when we hand dug Patterson Lake Trail, that we were making a ski trail.
You thought you were what?
Making a ski trail.
Did you?
And it was never ever used as a ski trail. But Raider Creek was. And people used to go from Sun Mountain, they'd go down Sunnyside and ski whatever trails they wanted, and then they'd ski down Raider Creek and then in towards Elbow Coulee, where Jack Barron had built a three-sided shelter, a big fireplace. And then we'd go pick them up on the Sun Mountain van and drive them back up.
Where's that shelter?
It's gone now because there's a house there.
That's my dream too.
Well, that was really fun. People loved that. And what we did is we took a 55-gallon drum and bolted it to the back of the van so people could just throw their skis on it
Yeah.
and jump in. And I remember one day I sent Tom Baker, who was the guy helping me lay down to pick people up. And I was in front of the lodge and he came up and the van was full. And there were 3 people sitting on the roof.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
You know, because they had this big flat roof on it with plywood and stuff that they'd used to carry other stuff. It was so popular. And then once we started using cats, we couldn't do Raider Creek anymore.
Yeah.
And for a while, we did Raider Creek and Patterson Lake on the lake surface with a snowmobile.
Yes.
But same thing, we couldn't do it consistently because the lake
Right.
wasn't always good.
Right.
So finally, we gave up and had Raider Creek on Snowshoe Trail.
Wow.
It's a big deal. Yeah, so we built Raider Creek, Crisscross Overland, Goshawk, Upper and Lower Inside Passage. Parts of those were already there with parts of Skid Rows. We just connected them. And Meadowlark didn't, the north end of Meadowlark where it goes around the other, that didn't exist. There was a skid road that came partway up, and then Meadowlark came around and went down Blue Jay, and there was nothing in between. So for a few years, we would wand it and just ski a little thing across there because we couldn't even bring the snowmobile across. And then when we got a little more money, we took a bulldozer, made that connection so that we could have Meadowlark and stuff like that. And then we built Blue Jay. And again, there was a little bit of a skid road, but we built the rest of it. And that was a mistake because we built the trail, then the Forest Service did a logging sale up there, and the loggers didn't follow our trail. They made their own road not quite the way we wanted it. So that one big, long hill was because of them. Learned a lesson there. We had to go out and stand with those guys. Anyway, so we built a lot of those trails.
I think we can pretty much say all of them. Because even if you didn't, you modified that.
We did.
Yeah, I mean.
except for Beaver Pond Road.
Yeah. And then you were instrumental kind of in what, mentoring or helping people with those with the other areas. I mean, Mazama, Rendezvous, here.
That's right. The Rendezvous, well, that was kind of easy because there was all big roads,
yeah.
and there were some changes. And Mazama,
Let's make sure this thing.
it kind of had to be the way it is. Dick Roberts really had an awful lot to do with that. And then, of course, John and John and the route that the community trail had. In the early days, to make that trail happen, we wouldn't make it go anywhere. You realize that we crossed the Methow River, where the suspension bridge is, with pallets that we laid in the river. And we did that for 2 years. But in those days, nobody cared. That's the point. They didn't care. You could do that.
That's why we have salmon restoration today, though.
That's
It's because
right.
what you did 30 years ago.
We laid these pallets in the river, and for those 2 years, there was virtually no water in that river there. And then we built the suspension bridge, and instant water. Unbelievable how that time went. Because the first year the suspension bridge was open, there was no way we could have put pallets in the river.
Wow.
Anyway, we had it like the end of Wolf Creek Road where it comes into Highway 20 near Brown Swamp. We ran the trail on the shoulder of that road
What did you?
for about a mile or so because we didn't have any other way around. And we always thought that it's better to do it than not do it. Did you ever meet John Frado? He was with Nordic Group International. These guys were trail designers. They had a big company and they did trail designs all over the country. Giants Ridge was probably the biggest thing that they did. And Great Glen Trails in New Hampshire they designed. And I remember he invited me to do a program in Bozeman, Montana, because they were trying to get a trail system going. So they invited me to come and talk about what we did. And in fact, those guys wanted to hire me, but they didn't want to do any real work. You know? But it was so funny because he was standing there telling these guys, he was saying, now look, you got to do it right, don't do it at all. Make sure that the trail has the right substrate and that you have the right drainages and culverts. And I got up and I said, no, don't worry about it. Just get the route from point A to point B. Do the other stuff later or you'll never get the route. So it was completely different than what everybody else was doing. But we felt that if we didn't make the trail happen, it would never happen. And that once people saw what it was, they would quickly understand it. And you saw that happen. In the early days, you talk to somebody and say, can we have a trail on your land? And they say, no. And nowadays, don't people come into the office every day and say, won't you put a trail on my land, please?
Yeah.
You know, so I think that really worked here, is to make it happen, then go back and make it better as you can. Otherwise, we would have never, ever got this trail done.
Yeah. Those are great. So, what's the one thing that happened though that allowed us this all to happen? I mean, what was the catalyst? Was it that Nordic skiing was so popular? That Dave Chandler told Jack Barron he needed to hire you? I mean, is there one thing? What got the whole snowball going?
I think if you can say there's one thing, I think it was the fact that at that one point, the three places that were doing cross-country skiing joined together with a vision of a community trail system rather than a private enterprise. And I think that was the key thing.
So you mean Mazama, all you guys
All
getting
of us
together
got
and saying,
together and said, let's do this together. And in 1980, Sal and I led a ski trip to Norway. And what an eye-opener that was. Because the whole country is nothing but community trails. Right? And you can just see what a huge difference it is between having a little cross-country center here and one here and one here, and having a place where you can ski from town to town, from place to place, and it's all part of the community. I mean, that was just, it just seemed like all of us at that time, that was such an obvious way to go.
wow.
So yeah,
That's
I think
really
that
that was
that's
the big
big.
one.
Yeah. And so once MBST was formed, man, so much could happen.
Yeah.
You know, money could be collected. People could be hired to do stuff. I mean, otherwise, you know, in the early days of Sun Mountain, I did every single thing to make that happen. Everything.
Yeah.
Sal drew, hand-drew drawings for ads in the Seattle Times.
Yeah.
And we, you know, I told the story 100 times. I'd go out with a snowmobile, and it would blow up. I'd get back to the lodge, take a second snowmobile, put it on a little sled I had, drag it back up to Sun Mountain, quick change my clothes, rent some skis, teach some lessons, go back out there, rebuild the snowmobile, and go out at night to ruin the trails. You know, that was it. We were doing every single thing there was, and we had no money to buy anything else or do anything different.
Right. Wow.
We began to pay for some of the grooming from the proceeds from the ski rentals for a while. But I could, you know, and I bought a few grooming lesson stuff, but I could see that that wasn't going to last.
Yeah.
So once we got that organization and said, okay, we have this group, we can start to charge, we can then develop better grooming stuff, we can buy better snowmobiles, which is what we began to do until the snowcats came on scene.
Right.
And here we are now.
Wow. So how many years before you got your first employee that wasn't Sally?
Actually, right away. There's
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, Portman. He was the husband of Jack Barrett's daughter, and he was our relief. If Sal and I wanted to go ski, he was the shop.
Yeah.
And then about a year after that or so, I hired a guy named Tom Baker, who I taught with in Seattle, a young guy, and he came in this groom, and Dave Williams came along before Snowcats and began to help us groom, and Rick Mazel back in those days.
Really?
Snowcats, yeah.
Oh. Didn't know that.
Who else did that kind of stuff? Steve Farmer was working with Dale and Enoch up at Diamond T. Steve Farmer was amazing. Didn't we know?
No, I've heard about him. Yeah.
He was so smart. This tall guy with the snowmobile got stuck. He just...
It's like Rob Seckinger.
Yeah. The rest of us were all walking around with bad backs. We lived those things. So yeah, we began to be able to hire people to do some of that other stuff.
And were you employed year-round at the start, or did you work like November to March, just
the
full
ski
on?
season, whatever, full on. And then in the summer, I guided.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Either climbing or river rafting or hiking or something with Liberty Bell Alpine Tours, which was based in the San Juan.
Oh, yeah.
Eric Sanford, I don't know if you know him. He's Eric.
Neat. Huh.
In fact, it was through Eric that Jay came.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Jay had a job in Alaska running a pool and community recreation center.
Really?
And Eric came here to start Liberty Bell Alpine Tours. Jay and Eric were college roommates. And so Eric talked to me when I got here.
Oh, God. That's funny. Okay, what else can I ask?
I know there's lots and lots of stories about
There's so
this
many.
stuff,
This is,
you know.
I like every employee needs to hear this. Thank God I'm recording it. And really, like every board member needs to hear these stories. I don't know if everyone knows these, and they're just
No, not a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Brett certainly does.
Because he's worked with you.
Yeah,
Everyone who's stood next to you.
He's worked on hard on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. How about when did you buy the ski school, or how did that come about?
Well, like everything else, in kind of a bizarre way. So, Jack Barron bought the skis, right? And there weren't enough. We needed more. So, I didn't know anything about business. I was a school teacher. I was a ski teacher. I still don't know anything about business. So, I would just order skis. I'd just call up the rep and say, hey, I need 10 more pair of this and 3 more pair of this. And he'd send them off, and then Sun Mountain would get the bill, and Sun Mountain would go ballistic. Call me into his office, if you can't do this, you got to get permission to buy this. And say, well, I got to have the stuff. You know, you can't blah, blah. And Sun Mountain was right on the edge in those days. And, so they were just freaking out. And finally, I said, well, this isn't going to work. I got to have the stuff this program. So I went to Jack and I said, hey, Jack, how how about I relieve you of this problem that you have buying skis by just buying what you have and I'll take it on as my own. And he just was so relieved. He said, great, here. And that's how it started. And that was probably about 78. I was just 2 years
2 years into it. Yeah.
And so then from then on, I had a special deal with Sun Mountain that I still do, which is I have a shop up there, and I can do all that rental stuff. And my staff helps sell their retail. All the retail stuff is theirs, and then I manage the trails for them and help them with promotion and slideshows or this or that or the other thing. And a lot of the this or that and the other thing I don't do much anymore. I used to go to Seattle and do slideshows. In fact, I used to go all over the Northwest and do slideshows. And one time they even sent me to Los Angeles, Chicago, Detroit to do slideshows to get people here. Total failure.
Yeah.
Absolute ridiculous. It was the stupidest thing we ever did. You can imagine driving around Chicago suburbs looking for ski shops to hand out brochures about Sun Mountain Lodge.
Yeah.
Not smart.
Wow.
But that's when the group that we called the Village Idiots took over.
Oh, really?
It was Village Resorts. It was a resort company. The Hubs didn't quite trust the locals yet, so they hired this management company, which siphoned off all the money and they realized it and booted them out. But that was one of their first moves in promotion. They said, "Oh yeah, okay, we got to send you around the country to promote business." I didn't know what to do. I mean, you end up in a big city like Chicago with no advance or anything. What?
Yeah.
Walk into a ski shop. Hey, you want a slideshow tomorrow? But Seattle, it did work in those days.
Yeah.
I used to the old store.
Yeah.
Had that upstairs room when they did Thursday night programs. Is that what it was?
I think so.
And so I'd do 2 or 3 of those a week here and at other shops. And in those days, the Northwest had a lot of places selling cross-country skis, something like that. And people would come and they would say, "Oh yeah, we saw your slideshow. Here we are." Of course, that was before the internet. Where we were on TV a few times.
Yeah.
Any of those little things to promote it that we could, but once again, there's no real budget for that. And MVSTA didn't spend much. Sun Mountain was the biggest player, but they didn't spend much either. So it was just mostly, I think, word of mouth.
Yeah.
To get people over here.
Wow. So how many people do you think you've taught to ski? Have you ever thought about that?
Thousands. Seriously, thousands.
Yeah.
Because
Like,
I started teaching cross-country skiing in about 1972.
yeah.
Before that, when I was in college, I ran a junior ski program for a ski shop. So I've been teaching skiing pretty much my whole life. And some of it was down to almost all of this cross-country. And all that, when I was on the demo team, all the clinics, and I still do a lot of instructor clinics and stuff. But I used to travel all the time too, and that also helped promote this place. So I would travel around to do instructor clinics to Snoqualmie Pass and White Pass and Spout Springs and places like that. So yeah, wish I could remember all their names.
Yeah. They remember yours. That's the key. How about, what's your take on the Nordic ski industry? I mean, what do you think it's growing, not growing, needs this, needs that, doesn't need anything? Or, I mean,
No, I think it's a hard sell. You know this probably way better than me at this point. But the demographics aren't particularly rosy. The baby boomers are getting older. Baby boomers are still the biggest market for this sport.
yeah.
And I'm really afraid that they're going to begin to drop out just as we get too bloody old. It's really hard to get the young ones in. What I see is that junior programs and junior race programs are doing really well throughout the country. And those kids are kind of our hope. We know that this sport has a huge drop-off rate for the teenage years. It's just not quite growing enough yet. Kind of there's a little deeper understanding that has to come, a little maturing. But the little kids like it a lot. Well, you see the program here. And those programs are really strong. So I don't see it as a big growth thing. I think it will hold its own, and I think it will hold its own here in the Mets out, and I think maybe even continue to grow just because it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. I mean, after all these years of skiing these trails, it's still so good. And I've skied a lot of different places. Still, this would be the place. Always. You've got oxygen, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You go away to some of these places and you can't breathe.
That's a good one. I haven't used.
Yeah, why don't you actually say if it's happening?
Beautiful scenery, great snow, absolutely some of the best skiing in the world. So I think because the quality here is so great, it'll continue to be strong. But I think nationwide, the sport's going to not really have much of a growth. I just can't see where it's going to come from.
Yeah.
And sort of to throw a question back at you, if all younger people are really electronically connected, what turns that connectivity into actual connectivity? I think everybody's going, we don't
Because
know.
we're talking about the hardest sport there is. Like we can get them to be active at low levels, but to go from electronics to, I mean, cross-country skiing is just so hard for most people. It's a hard workout, it's hard to learn. We have so many barriers we're trying to overcome there.
That's the real value.
That's why you and I do it. It's the best workout there is, and once you never mastered it. And so how do we find people like us that think that? And it seems like there's less and less and less. I don't know.
I don't either. I'm sure you watched some of the People Are Awesome YouTubes. Just go look at People Are Awesome.
People are awesome.
You'll see the stuff that people are doing. The people like
crazy stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, insane.
Yeah.
How can they do that?
Yeah.
Handstands on motorcycles while they're going on one wheel, and mountain bikes that are doing flips.
Yeah.
You've been to Fruta.
Yeah.
You've seen
yeah.
that terrain.
Yeah.
And they're going down those hills fast and doing flips and spins.
Yeah. Yeah.
Way beyond my understanding.
Yeah.
So if the electronically engaged kids are watching that, and they see somebody just kind of cruising down that white track.
Yeah.
It's that.
Right. Yeah.
That's your job now.
Yes, it is. That is mine. Our job. It's our job. How many times? Well, I guess I should ask. Do you think you'll ever get sick of being here? You'll never get tired of skiing here, hiking here.
But I have to admit that, and this not just because of this year, but I felt it before that. I get really frustrated about the middle of July to about the middle of September. It's just, for me, it's too hot and too dusty.
Oh.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's not windy enough.
Because your passion's windsurfing now.
In the summer,
yeah. That's your summer passion.
And you just think about every other time of year, like particularly the spring. The spring is just so incredible.
Yeah.
Because you can do every sport there is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mountain biking's so beautiful. Trails aren't dusty. You can still go
Ski.
skiing. It's windy. It's not too hot.
Yeah.
Everything's green. But now you get to this time of year.
Huh. Yeah.
It's just. I wish it would snow right about now.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do. But anyway, that's the only time. If I retire, which has to come pretty soon, maybe we'll spend this time of year traveling a little more, or being away a little bit. But otherwise, like this year in particular, all of May and June, you'd say, well, you want to go to the other side for this weekend or go to Canada? No, it's too nice here. It's too beautiful. The trails are too great. Even though we do the same ones over and over again, I can't tell you how many times I've hiked Patterson.
That's what I was going to ask. How many times have you hiked the Sun Mountain Trails?
There's a bazillion, Almost every day I'm on those trails.
Oh,
Almost every day.
that's amazing.
And it's part of my job, and luckily I'm at that point where I can consider it part of my job to go look around and see what needs to be done. And I can call Steve and have him do it.
Did you hear that, James? It's part of his job. It's very important for him to be on the trails.
Although I cut out a lot of trees this year.
Oh, yeah, thank you for doing that. That was an amazing feat that you and Steve and Rob did.
Now, Rob
Unbelievable.
did the most. His
Yeah.
job was way harder
Yeah.
than we
Well, look at him. He's that monster. He's
did. He didn't need to
Paul
cut them into
Bunyan.
very
He's
small
like Paul
pieces.
Bunyan. He's like, he just pushes with one finger. It works. Okay, what else can I ask you? How about just fun ones? Favorite trail?
Winter or summer.
Winter and summer.
You put them all together because really in the summer, the Patterson Lake, Raider Creek, Yellow Jacket Rodeo was sort of my ride. And I guess I like that best, but Black Bear's a real close second. Sometimes with Blue Wall, like you probably do. But,
Yeah.
hiking Patterson Mountain. And skiing. Skiing's different. Every year there's a trail of the year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it just comes out. And because either the snow conditions that year or something about it, it's like for that year, Yellow Jacket Say was just the best. And another year, Sunnyside might be the trail of the year. It just sort of
Yeah.
does that.
We've got to get that from you every year. That'd be so fun
That's
to
right.
do Don's
Trail of the year.
Trail of the Year. Oh, that's really good. Great. How about top ski tip?
Facial position.
Facial position.
Yeah, it's supposed to be fun, so you need to smile, right?
Good one. That's good. How many years have you had that one? How many years have you had that tip?
Oh, 20 probably. I usually end the lesson with that. Or after that.
That is
I always say
really
something
good.
like, okay,
Can we print
we've
that?
been working on all this stuff, you guys. Now, here's the real secret. They're all getting really serious, you know. And then you say, good facial position. And almost always someone smiles, and then you can point to them and say, see, and then you're done.
Oh, that is fantastic.
That's it.
I think we'll be ending with that.
Good.
And then, that is so great.
You know, there's lots of other people that have worked just as hard and just as well.
Well,
Tons of them.
so who would be our next trailblazers?
Well,
Who would
Dick
you?
Roberts.
Yeah.
You know, he's sort of an unsung hero around here. He's done so much. A lot of big loop is due to him.
That's one of my favorites. but
Yeah.
that might go away, right?
That's a great
So,
one.
I don't
I
know.
don't know about that.
Okay.
Anyway, he did all that work all by himself.
Yeah.
You know, he used to do all that grooming in Miss Emma all by himself. And he worked really hard and just quietly would go on and do that. So he's a big one right now. And then in the early days, people that sort of you don't think about much of being involved, like Dale Caulfield was really heavily involved
Huh.
for a long time. We used to have a Thanksgiving party for MBSTA, and it was at Dale's house. And we'd all go to Dale's house and we'd have a big turkey dinner. But first, we'd all take highway flares and we'd do a big long ski chain all the way down Stubbhorse to town.
I heard about that.
And go back there, and everybody would have photo remarks in their
Yeah,
jackets and
yeah.
stuff like that.
But why was he so instrumental? Not
Well,
because
he and Steve Farmer.
Because he cooked the turkey, or did he?
Yeah, no, he and
More
Monica
than
would cook the turkey and have it in their house. But he was one of the original owners of Rendezvous Outfitters. And so it was he and Farmer first. You have to check that.
Yeah.
And then Jay joined him, and then had the upper join them, and then they sold it. But for a long, long time, Dale and Steve Farmer were doing most of the work after Enoch Kraft left.
Doing what work though? The huts
Taking
or
care
actually?
of the huts.
But the huts were their business. So.
But he was involved to make sure the trails were groomed.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
he drove the snowmobiles. He drove the snowcats.
Okay.
He's the kind of guy who can do pretty much anything.
Can he? Yeah.
And he did, and he never claimed a lot of credit for a lot of work that he did.
Yeah.
A lot of organizing stuff. He was there all the time. My mind is kind of a blank right now. But of course, the obvious ones are Hayes and Sunderland.
John and John, yeah.
Just did. Hayes was. I did so much, and we all helped him a lot. Like I would go with him to Olympia to do a little dog and pony show to try and get grants. We'd do a little slideshow with music and all that stuff. But he did all the groundwork. He did all the talking to people and figuring it out. Just hour after hour after hour.
Yeah, someone needs to cover him or interview him like in depth.
It's hard
before.
to do.
Is it? Yeah. Huh.
He
Can't Sally do a little?
He just keeps,
Or does he? Yeah. Huh.
But he did so many things, and he would set up the meetings in Olympia with what was then the IAC, or the meetings with the county commissioners or county planners, or any of those big official things. Hayes kind of had it. I would often go along to do a little slideshow thing, or to speak in complete sentences, stuff like that. And it usually worked because he had all this paperwork, all this stuff, all these details, and I could just sort of add the little more exciting stuff, pictures of people skiing and smiley faces on the trail and stuff like that. I think the combination of those things really worked, but without his groundwork, none of this would be going on. And I think that all of this stuff, still the biggest single thing, is that there's so many people that cooperated, that bought into the whole program, and volunteered their time or their property or something to help. And that you can kind of take this back to the staff, that I think is really, really important to work hard on what we used to call Trade for Trail Pass program. I guess call it something different now. But because it fosters people's feeling of ownership in the trail system, and that community feeling that it's a community trail belongs to all of us is so critical. Because as long as that's going on, then the political stuff gets easy. Because the whole community says, yeah, we want this. So
that's great.
That's important. Talking too much.
No, that's the whole idea.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. What else? Anything else you want to say?
No,
like if you were written about in the Trails magazine, 22,000 copies at the bakery. What do you want? What's the one message you want to share?
Get out on the trails. That's it. I mean, you got to realize that most of the people you included that have worked hard to make all this stuff happen, you do it because you have a deep passion for those trails, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is self-interest. I'm out there every day on those trails. I love them. And I think other people will too. So it's, one of the biggest kicks I get is when I see all these people out there having a good time. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
It's
Me
good.
too. That's totally what gets me excited.
Yeah.
If I go out and no one's out there, I just hate it. I hate it. I just want to see a bunch of people.
That's right. I love it when Chicken parking lot is full.
Yeah.
I always try and convince the Forest Service of that. That's the busiest parking lot that they have in the whole system. Anyway,
Yes.
there you go. Thanks for the coffee and cookie.
Oh, anytime. I'll turn this off. But I probably shouldn't.